Welcome to the Virtual Reimagined Retreat 2020 Cybersecurity Conference here at the Carolina Cyber Center of Monterey College. Thank you so much for your attendance. Yesterday, we had a great session where we started off with a kind of a profound message from our president, Dr. Maurer. We introduced the values, the characteristics that we believe important in a cybersecurity professional of character, including grit, critical thinking, all leading to that character with discipline. The curiosity, the insatiable curiosity it takes to be successful in cybersecurity. Today, we have a new session where we're leveraging on the back of what we finished yesterday. Remember yesterday, we finished with a presentation from the president and CEO of MePush, where he talked about incidents, the ransomware, the two largest incident responses going on in America today and what the lessons learned were. Today, I'm going to introduce Ed Scotus, who's going to talk about the panelists he's going to lead. Ed, thank you so much for your leadership today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Adam. I really do appreciate it. I'd like to welcome everybody to this event. This will be our State of the Union discussion. There's so many things going on with cybercrime, and we have some really incredible individuals to share their expertise with you. As Adam mentioned, the theme of Retreat 2020 is developing cybersecurity professionals of character. Now, we define character as positive values in action and the gap between your actions and your intent. So the focus of this event, you heard this yesterday, you're going to hear it again today, you're going to hear it during my session that I'm going to deliver to you on Thursday. We're focused on developing individuals with 6 foundational values that build character: technical skill, critical thinking, grit, discipline, curiosity, and collaboration. Now let's focus on the task at hand here, and that is dealing with this cybercrime problem. In 2019 alone, more than 8,000 complaints from individuals and small businesses in North Carolina alone were filed with the FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center. Monetary losses totaled over $48 million. Now, the FBI estimates that only about 10% of cybercrime actually gets reported. So we can easily estimate that the 48 million is just that tip of the iceberg. And really, over $500 million were likely stolen through cybercrime in 2019 in North Carolina. Now, we're often besieged with stats and figures of cybercrime at a macro level, but we're going to focus in this session in the State of the Union regarding cybersecurity crime and threats in the specific region of North Carolina. Leaders from the FBI, the Department of Public Safety, and the state's chief risk officer are going to discuss the threats, but also prudent measures that individuals and businesses can take to try to lower those statistics, to try to be able to defend ourselves appropriately. This session will also allow you to ask questions of these leaders to hear them respond to some not so easy questions. I'll be asking some of those questions, and we want the questions to come in from you as well. You can type them into your Zoom session, and we're going to have a special question and answer section at the end. Now, it's generally not necessary to repeat a speaker's bio, but that said, these speakers we have here, these 3 individuals, are really quite impressive. And I want to go through the bio of the first one, and then we'll have a short briefing from the first presenter. Then I'll do the bio of the second one, followed by a briefing, followed by the bio of our third presenter, and then their briefing. And then we're going to open it up to questions and answers. So we're going to have a small intro followed by maybe 15-minute presentation from each of these. The whole session is designed to go until about 1 p.m. Eastern time. So looks like we got a pretty good setup for a cybersecurity State of the Union address, right? So we're going to start with Tom McGrath. Tom McGrath and his team at the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, they work with federal, state, and local partners, including the North Carolina National Guard, Department of Homeland Security, FBI, SBI, the U.S. Secret Service, the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, that's the MS-ISAC, and others to thwart cyber attack. Tom is uniquely qualified, plugged into all these different organizations to help improve our security. I'm very thankful for what he does. McGrath is a veteran of the FBI who served as a special agent with the FBI National Computer Crime Squad at the Washington field office of the FBI before transferring to the Raleigh resident agency of the FBI's Charlotte division in 2000. Since then, he has worked with the Cyber Crime Squad and most recently was the FBI's representative at the North Carolina ISAC Fusion Center. Tom, I'm so glad you're here. Why don't I turn it over to you, and please share your insights with us. Thank you.
Ed, thanks so much for the introduction. I appreciate it very much. I'm going to share my screen here, make sure everybody can see this. Does it come through okay?
Looks good. Looks good. Thank you.
Okay, terrific, terrific. Let's go ahead and get it started here. There we go. Okay, well, again, Ed, thanks so much for that introduction. I really appreciate it. We had a few technical challenges here this morning. We were hoping to have this super fancy camera system going, but we didn't get that working. So we kind of adapt and overcome. So we're here. I'm here with Supervisory Special Agent Jessica Nye with the FBI, and Maria Thompson, the State Chief Risk Officer, whose video was fantastic. She's giving me the eye right now. So let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and get started here. So the Department of Public Safety, Division of Emergency Management, we have a cyber unit, and it was created only 2 years ago. And that was as we saw that the need for a state response to that kind of fits between the State Department of Information Technology and the law enforcement folks. We needed a group that could do that, help the counties, help the cities out when they have issues. Something that was kind of falling a little bit in between the cracks there, and I think everyone recognized it, and they were Secretary Hooks led the charge in getting this going here. So I definitely appreciate all his leadership, Executive Director Sprayberry, as well with emergency management. So where I fit in is at the State Fusion Center. So I'm detailed there. I work kind of in both buildings. The State Fusion Center is run by the State Bureau of Investigation, which is led by their director, Robert Schumeyer. And the Fusion Center is run by the State Bureau of Investigation. It has a number of different participants from different agencies, state and federal. So we have a number of police officers, special agents from the State Bureau of Investigation, analysts from State Bureau of Investigation and Department of Public Safety. We have an FBI agent assigned over there, and we have a Department of Homeland Security intel and analysis officer assigned there as well. So the idea here is being able to get information from across the country to the folks here who need it in North Carolina. And in reverse, we want to get that information that we learn here in North Carolina out to our partners across the country. So this is kind of where we fit in. Here are the participants in the Fusion Center here. I just listed their SEALs here. I kind of talked through most of those already. The one that I failed to mention was the National Guard, and they are key to getting the cyber response in the state to be very effective and very helpful to the folks across the state. So they're really a key member, also embedded in the Fusion Center. So Ed referred to the Internet Crime Complaint Center, the IC3, 2019 report, and gave some general overviews of it. And we kind of see the same thing here in North Carolina. We're phishing. You can see that as number 1 listed here. And that's a big deal. It's easy to fall for it, but also it's easy to protect against it with a good training program. So that's one thing we certainly recommend.
Hey, Tom, sorry to interrupt, but we're seeing the speaker view. You might want to go to presentation mode. Just
Okay.
thanks.
Let me see that here. I'm trying to find it here. Do you know where that is here?
Might be under display settings at the top. Maybe there's a swap monitors or something on there. Yeah, swap presenter and side view right under there. There you go.
How about that?
Yep, bingo.
Okay, good. thanks to my partners here, I was able to work my way through that. Usually, of course, the COVID and work doing everything remotely has brought challenges to everyone. So, but thank you for bearing with me here. Hopefully this is a little clearer for you. And as I said, Ed was right on the money with the growth of internet crimes. You can see there's almost over the past 5 years, close to 2 million complainants, and that probably is a small fraction of how many people were affected, and a loss over $10 billion, and it probably is more than that as well. Here's some state statistics, and you'll see North Carolina falls in here at number 16, and this is count by victim per state. And then if we look at the loss, we're number 15. So just about makes sense, but you can see that loss number there, almost $50 million. So that's a big number. And then another thing they look at is like where are the victims? And the bad guys will target people by age, and they certainly focus on elderly because they're easily tricked by some of these scams, very trusting. And you'll see the under 20. There's a lot of people there under 20 that are also very trusting and end up getting taken advantage of by the bad guy. So that's it's kind of how it plays out. And the thing about people under 20, they don't have a lot of money, so they can't lose that much money. The people over 60 have their life savings, and we've seen more times than we care to know where these folks have lost their entire retirement and life savings, and it's very disastrous. Here's a case that was worked out of the Charlotte FBI, and it basically is an example that the Internet Crime Complaint Center put up. This just kind of shows how things work. It was a tech support scam. Basically, pop-ups came up saying, hey, you've got a serious computer problem. We need you to click here to fix it. And again, quite a few seniors did fall for that. Total of more than $3 million loss there. So Ed spoke a little bit, and I think Adam referred to it as well. The Cybercrime Task Force. I am under the Department of Public Safety in the Homeland Security section. The NC Isaac is the Fusion Center. It's the Information Sharing and Analysis Center, not to be confused with an ISAC. And the National Guard also falls under the Department of Public Safety. So when they're under state orders, they're working for the government, under governor, under the Department of Public Safety. The Cybersecurity Response Force is run by the National Guard. It's got all of those folks that I just mentioned, plus the NCLGISA strike team. And the NCLGISA, it stands for North Carolina Local Government Information Systems Association. And these are the technical experts in the counties and the cities and the school systems who come together and help their neighbors. That's kind of their mission. And they fit perfectly into our group. During a hurricane, they'll be deployed historically to go to the coast and help pull cables and get networks going again and that sort of thing. What we've been doing, we've been leveraging their expertise to help us when we respond to ransomware incidents across the state. So they're very familiar with the systems that are used by the cities and counties and school systems, and they understand it, and they understand the limitations, and they have a great deal of credibility with their partners there in across the state. So they are an invaluable member to our team. And so that's the CSRF, the Cybersecurity Response Force. We work in partnership here with the Department of Information Technology, and you'll hear from Maria Thompson here shortly. Our North Carolina Emergency Management branch offices and area coordinators, our communications folks at North Carolina Emergency Management. We work closely with the FBI because they're really the law enforcement arm of this whole thing. And Supervisor Special Agent Jessica Nye will speak to you about where they fit in, but they're a critical member of the team here. We also work closely with DHS, CISA. Those folks are they're cyber experts, and they can help. And I do a lot of help with education and assessments and things like that. So they're very important. U.S. Secret Service, they're kind of new to our team here, and they can help when they can help. And they've got some skilled folks that they can help us with. And although a lot of times during these times they're pulled off on protection details, so but they help where they can. Now, depending upon who the victim is, if it's a county, we're going to get the 911 folks involved. We're going to get the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, who runs the CJIS, the Criminal Justice Information System here in the state. So there's some reporting requirements. There's some other things you may not think about. This State Board of Elections, and that's obviously high on our radar right now, but each county is its own little kingdom for elections, and they've got county boards of election, and we work with the state board and try to make sure things are buttoned up there. Department of Health and Human Services, if a school gets infected, they're going to lose education time, but they have meals they have to provide for the kids, and there's a lot of things you just don't really think about that get affected when a cyber attack happens. We'll work with Department of Public Instruction. MCNC is the network provider for all those K through 12s and community colleges. We work with the community college system and then any vendors that each of the victims may have to make sure we get them up and running. Now, DIT, North Carolina Department of Information Technology, funds a lot of what my unit does here. And that includes two of the big programs is they're IPS sensors that they have under state contract, and they've deployed them free to the counties at the cost of DIT to help secure those counties. So my unit helps deploy those, helps kind of get the right people talking to each other. So in this case, we use SecureWorks iSensors. That's the contract that the state has right now. Another thing the state did was purchase a program from a company called BitSight. They provide a cybersecurity score. It's analogous to a credit score that you would have. And so they were able to provide that to all 100 counties and now to K through 12s and community colleges. So Maria Thompson was able to expand that. And what they're doing is they're looking at how secure, they're looking from the outside, just like a hacker would look from the outside. What ports are open, what's configured correctly, what's not configured correctly, that sort of thing. They make an assessment and they come up with a score for them. If there's a huge drop in this score, it gets sent to me and to the DIT and to the National Guard. And we take a look and get in contact with that county or the school system and say, hey, listen, we see something just happened here, just to give you a heads up. And sometimes it's a user's device, personal device connected to a public Wi-Fi that's seen, and sometimes it's their network. So we've been able to preemptively get out in front of some of these things and hopefully prevent incident responses. Another thing the National Guard does is they've gone out and done county assessments. So they've done, I can't remember the number of counties yet, but due to COVID, things got slowed down. They were hoping to have all 100 done by election time. I think they're a good part of the way there. And they show up on site and they run it through its paces and come up with a report to help the county. That also gives some backup to the IT folks in the counties to ask for additional funding. Here they have an outside source saying you have these deficiencies, they need to be fixed. These are things that you need to do to fix it. They can take that and go to their county managers or folks in the city and go ahead, if it's a city, go ahead and try to get some funding. We're also trying to support Board of Elections here as we're getting close. Actually, we're in the elections right now, of course, early voting. So we're intimately involved with them. And DHS has gone out and done an assessment on all the county boards across the state. So one of the things I said we hoped not to have to do, but if we don't prevent it, there are cyber emergencies. Ransomware gets loaded onto a system. What we do is we get all the folks here I've talked to you about and get them out on a call and try to figure out what's going on and try to provide whatever assistance we can. The National Guard has a team that can actually deploy and do forensics, capture images, bring them back, do forensics. They've got threat hunters. The FBI has coordinations with all their field offices across the country so they can find out exactly if there's a variant that's attacked of people here in North Carolina. They're able to find the office that has dealt with this the most and get some things to look for. So we can go ahead and kind of help those victims out by looking for the right vulnerabilities that they've may found in other situations. I spoke about the Nickel Jesus strike teams and also the vendors. How the incident responses go. We'll start off with, we get notified a variety of ways. Sometimes word of mouth, sometimes they call our ops center, the emergency management ops center. We'll start off with an initial scoping call just to kind of understand what's going on. And typically it's kind of like a fight. They just got punched in the nose and they're seeing stars and they're not sure what's going on. So we get them together. We have a number of folks who've been out on these before and can provide some guidance and just calm them down and say it's going to be okay. I talked about deploying the National Guard out there to assist. Nickel Jesus will assist. FBI gets on site. DIT has folks that get on site. Emergency management has folks on site. So they assess the network. They collect whatever forensics, whatever images they can to do some analysis. They do the threat hunting, try to understand what vulnerability was exploited, when did it happen? So when they go back to backups, if they have backups, then they know how far back to go. One of the big things I want to mention, try to always say, is if you must have backups and they must be disconnected from the system and stored somewhere else. So you can have interim backups all you like, but you got to have something that's not connected to the system, because if you get attacked with ransomware, you are going to, those attached backups are all going to be encrypted. And we've seen that many times. So one of the values of the Fusion Center is the ability to take the indicators of compromise and boil them down, anonymize them, and push them back out. That way, County X doesn't see their name all over the place that they just got hacked. It just is, this variant of ransomware was discovered on a victim in North Carolina. These are the indicators of compromise that were identified. So that's one thing that the Fusion Center does well. It's good at sharing information. Fusion Center shares information on all types of threats, drug, human trafficking. So we've got the infrastructure to do that. So there'll be, while that's going on, they'll start rebuilding the network, and they help if we're able to get one of those eye sensors out there. We do that and kind of look at the traffic just to see, give ourselves a warm feeling that the clean network is indeed clean. And then of course we follow up with an after action review. What we've seen at a lot of times, phishing vectors, you remember that slide I showed from 2019 IC3, where that was #1. We see that a lot. We see a lot of unpatched systems and applications, excess privileges, accounts that should have been closed down, or people with privileges that should have been reduced are just sitting out there. So once a bad guy gets in, they can, if they get to an account that has extended privileges, they're able to do a lot more damage. RDP exploitation, that's a big one. and especially when we're talking COVID, we're talking about working from another site, from home or from some other office. And a lot of companies and people are relying on RDP, but it's very vulnerable to exploitation. So we see the networks, a lot of times they don't understand even what the network is. They don't know what's connected to their network. And a lot of times these networks are very flat, they're not segmented, so that once a bad guy gets in there, they'll run through the whole thing very fast. So having a network map accurate is really important. That would be the great thing to hand the National Guard when they showed up on site. I talked about backups already. Intrusion prevention systems, it costs money. Some of the counties and cities don't have that kind of resources, but that would have been something that could have helped. They don't update the indicators of compromise as they come out through MSISAC, where we send ours as well. They don't update. So they're as new things come up, they're getting caught by it. They either don't have cyber insurance or not sure they have cyber insurance or not sure even what cyber insurance covers. And that becomes an important fact, especially when you're talking about PII that's been taken from these systems. A lot of times there's a notification that's needed, and the cyber insurance may be able to handle that. So that's something they should understand what they've got. The public information officer, oftentimes it's the first time he or she has seen this kind of thing happen, and they don't really know what to do. So we can help guide them as far as what we've seen in the past and some good things to say and some good things not to say. I mean, there's really no need, because the bad guy's going to be looking at your messaging. And if you start telling things you don't really want out there in the public, they're going to exploit that, because they may still be on the system. And they don't have a plan. And so we say you need to get a plan together, incident response plan. You need to actually exercise it, make sure it works. I remember a situation where I'd heard of where backups were stored in a closet and they ended up trying to reload from those backups and didn't work. And come to find out, it was next to an elevator shaft. And as the elevator went up and down, the motor on the elevator ended up messing the magnetic information. So things like that, you got to try it out, make sure it works. And then this is where I end my portion of the presentation, and then I'll be around for questions at the end. And I'm going to turn it over to Supervisor Special Agent Jessica Nye. And because of our technical issues, we're just going to swap spots here.
Okay, that's good. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jessica. Tom, thank you for the insight. That was really, really helpful, really interesting. And some questions are coming in. That is wonderful. Please do type those questions for Tom and our next and up and coming speakers. We really want to hear from you. And we'll do that Q&A section right at the end. But let me introduce to you Jessica Nye. Supervisory Special Agent Jessica Nye is the current supervisor of the FBI Cyber Squad in Raleigh, North Carolina. Prior to her arrival in North Carolina in 2015, Jessica spent 8 years working in the Baltimore field office on their cyber squad and 2 years at FBI Cyber Division headquarters in Washington, D.C. She has significant experience working cyber-related matters, including computer intrusion investigations, intellectual property rights violations, theft of trade secrets, economic espionage, and other investigations. It's really great to have you here. Jessica, please take it away.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Tom, for that lead in and setting the stage for where that we are in North Carolina. Like I said, looking forward to some questions at the end. So if you have any, please feel free to get them into the chat window, save them up for the end, whatever works best for you. And I'll try to answer them as much as I can. Obviously, there's some things we can't go into, but I'll try to explain how things work, or maybe expand on something if I didn't fully get the point across as to, like I said, as I'm going through the presentation, but then also the questions that you may have at the end. So real quick, just wanted to go over the FBI real quick. Like I said, I appreciate the introduction into things. I've been working for the FBI for over 15 years. And in that time, I've been working cyber my entire career. I have an undergrad and graduate degree in computer science. And so it's kind of no surprise that the FBI would put us over or put me into working within cyber. Sometimes the FBI it's funny about where that they place people, but within the cyber world, they're very good about picking out our cyber talent and making sure that they're going to work our most complicated, most technical investigations that we see within the FBI. So it's been an opportunity and really a privilege to see how that the FBI has evolved and how that we counter the cyber threat, how that we have kind of changed our focus, changed the way that we've gone after our technical actors, and even the different types of investigations that are on cyber squads. Traditionally, we would work everything from internet fraud cases and crimes against children or our child pornography cases, and some of our, a little bit more of our traditional criminal activity. And we've since moved a lot of those cases over to our criminal squads. So that way our cyber squads are really handling intrusion matters. So when we say intrusion, it's that unauthorized access, anything where that, you have somebody that's hacking in, they're in your network, again, without that unauthorized access. And we'll go through some of the actors that are behind that. And that's really our main focus within the cyber squads. Here in North Carolina, we're lucky enough to have 2 squads. Again, I sit in Raleigh, and then my sister squad is down in Charlotte. We have about 15 agents in the state, special agents working cyber. We have 4 computer scientists, we have 4 intelligence analysts, and we have numerous different task force officers. So that means you have state, local, and federal partners that are detailed over to our cyber squads that work side by side as we're facing this threat. We've really been able to model our joint terrorism task force, in that we know that we can't do this together alone. Tom was mentioning before how that we kind of come together when a lot of these ransomware events are happening, because we know it's not just the FBI, we know it's just not the state, we know if we're going to be successful in this space, we have to do this together. And so we've been fortunate enough here having these 2 cyber squads. We have personnel that sit then in Charlotte, in Greensboro, in Raleigh, and in Wilmington. And so we kind of are pretty well spread across the state, and in a position where that we can respond hopefully within an hour, no more than 2 hours, to get to some type of cyber incident. If there is something massive going on, we definitely can send someone from our, say, Hickory office to a site just to get somebody, boots on ground, knowing that a more technical body might be en route. But again, very fortunate from that side of the house. Tom mentioned also just diving into numerous different field offices. The FBI has 56 field offices across the country. Again, we're very fortunate to have that connectivity. So that way, if there's an event happening in, say, Seattle, we're not waiting, for Seattle local law enforcement to try to get that into our system. We have immediate connectivity to see, okay, what's happening in Seattle, that then we can start prepping North Carolina, assuming that at some point in time, the actors are not going to be very specific of saying, we're only going to focus on the Northwest part of the United States. We're only going to focus there. I mean, they are going after us all across the globe and all across the country. So we're very fortunate to have additional visibility across the country. And then also overseas, we have our FBI cyber agents that are in over 20 countries overseas. We have FBI personnel that are actually in over 80 countries though, but specifically we've put cyber trained personnel in the countries that we find the most cyber activity emanating from. So that way, again, as we know, a lot of our threats are overseas. The threat actors may be overseas, but also infrastructure might be overseas. So if we are conducting an investigation and all of a sudden we come across a server that's hosted in, say, Germany, well, it's not like I have to then call over to the embassy or call over to some German authority to say, hi, my name is Jessica Nye. I work cyber matters for the FBI, and trying to broker that relationship. We already have a special agent that sits in the United States Embassy that works alongside our German cyber authorities. So that way it's seamless to say, okay, we can call over to that agent, say, this is what we have. Can you work with the German authorities? Can we give legal process to the Germans for them to then assist us with an investigation? Similarly, if we find subjects that are overseas, we'll work with that host country to say, okay, can you work with us on trying to arrest somebody, work on extradition back here? But we'll go through all of that. But again, just trying to give you a sight picture as to where that we are within the FBI. So this is a survey that I like to show. It's a little bit dated now. However, this is coming from BestVPN or bestvpn.com. And the question is in this survey is, how often do you yourself worry about the following things? Frequently, occasionally, rarely, or never. And you see all the way up at the top of the list, it says having your personal credit card or financial information stolen, being the victim of identity theft. And I think that's where we are as a society. We are most concerned about this. Now, granted, this is pre-COVID, so maybe, pandemic might be a little bit higher up on the list, but this is where that we are. We are very concerned of the cyber threat. We know that within the federal law enforcement, and you all know that. I mean, that's why that you're here right now, hopefully learning and trying to figure out better understanding of the threats that are out there and how to better protect yourselves. I do think it's interesting that all the way at the bottom of the list is getting murdered or assaulted by a coworker. So I think that's positive, that maybe, particularly now, maybe people aren't in the workplace as much, but I do think that's a good state to be in, that we like to go to work. We feel confident there, but we are all pretty confident that we're going to get hacked at some point in time. So really, who's behind the hacking? And we get this question fairly often because I think it helps when you're trying to prepare you yourself, your company, personally, on how to protect yourself, is knowing, well, who's behind it? You know, I always hear about hacking and, there's always some headline story about the latest ransomware incident or latest intrusion. And so I think this helps us give a better understanding of the different groups that the FBI looks at. This isn't something to say that, that this is the way that they have to have everything bundled together. Lots of other different private sector incident response firms may loop it into 4 different groups, but for the way that we look at it, we look at these 6 different groups. So if you're looking over on the left-hand side, you'll see hacktivists. These are individuals that are hacking for some type of political, socio-economic purpose. They are hacking because they are upset with something, they're frustrated with something, and they want to get behind it and have some type of intrusion activity associated with it. If you know about, Anonymous or those type of groups, this is what hacktivist is. Are they successful? Absolutely. Is it something that we need to prepare ourselves for? Sure, because they're successful in what that they do. In terms of their sophistication level, they're not at the sophistication level of many of our nation state actors, but they are successful in how that they conduct their cyber intrusions. We oftentimes see where that an executive may put out a tweet or put out some statement, and it may be something political. It might be something of a current event going on. And a group may not agree with or appreciate what that executive has just said. And so then that company may be on the back end of some type of intrusion activity because of it. It may be a denial of service attack against that company, again, just because they did not agree with what that executive said. For us, it's not that we tell a victim or tell executives don't do those things, but just know, I mean, you certainly have the right to put out that information. Just know that there is a chance that you may receive some type of cyber attack on the back end when you are going to voice some of those opinions. The next group is our criminally motivated group. So these are individuals who are hacking for financial gain. And it's not just hacking into your bank account and emptying your bank account out. Certainly that happens, but it's also anything that they can hack into that they can monetize in the back end. So if a hacker is successful in hacking in and stealing your personal identifying information, if they're able to steal your intellectual property and then sell it afterwards, those are the financially motivated actors that we're looking at. They are very sophisticated in what that they're doing. Certainly ransomware also falls into this category. And like I said, and they're prolific. We're seeing this here in the United States, we're seeing it from cyber actors overseas, and they're very good at what they're doing. And certainly, like I said, that the numbers of the loss from victims has risen exponentially over the past few years. The insider threat, I'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end of the presentation. And we bring up the insider threat not to alarm individuals of, there's this great insider threat within each company, and you need to set up this type of environment where that coworkers are concerned and they're looking to, tell on different coworkers because maybe their activity is a little bit off or there's just unusual type of behavior and, oh, that person must be an insider. We're not trying to set up that type of environment. All that we're trying to point out is that employees become disgruntled. And unfortunately, when employees become disgruntled, sometimes what may happen is that you, as a company, may be on the back end of some type of intrusion or cyber campaign. And like I said, again, that's not something to create this type of animosity or environment where that nobody wants to collaborate or work together. It's just, unfortunately, this is where that it is, and that there are employees that have become disgruntled and then conducted intrusions against that company. Espionage, these are nation state cyber actors. So those that are hacking on behalf of their own government. And certainly, you hear about in the news where that the FBI has indicted actors behind or in Russia and China, in Iran and North Korea. And we certainly are seeing activity coming from those countries, but it's not just limited to those four. Again, like I said, any country that may see that the United States is doing something very well, and that could be across the board. Maybe it's something in agriculture, and a new farmer has created a new seed that doesn't require as much water for it to be successful in its growth. Another country may be interested in that, and so they may hack in, steal the secret sauce as to how that farmer was able to create it, and bring it back to their own country. Because why spend the time, money, research and development and putting it together yourself when you can just go ahead and hack into it and steal it and bring it back? So obviously a concern for us. Terrorism, exactly as you would imagine, these are cyber terrorists that are hacking on behalf of their own terrorist organization. So there are terrorists from Al-Qaeda, from ISIS, from domestic terrorism organizations that will hack to further their cause. And again, a concern for us, for sure. And then also warfare. And when we say warfare, we're getting into the point of not hacking to have a financial gain or not hacking to steal information. In the warfare category, you're talking about hacking to destroy. So it's that destructive, malicious activity. That's the main goal and purpose behind it. And the best example of this was way back in 2014, where that you had the North Koreans hack into Sony Pictures Entertainment and completely destroy their network over that movie, The Interview. Again, something that they didn't agree with Sony moving forward with that production and that movie. And so their goal at the end of that was to hack in and destroy the entire network. And that's what they were able to do. They were very successful in that. And it was a very concerning time because it was more than just destroying their network. It was, employees that were receiving harassing phone calls. There were threats to even the theater distributors that said, if you release this movie, there's going to be a 9/11 type of attack in your theater. I mean, it was very malicious and destructive in what their goal was behind that attack. So for us in North Carolina, some people might be saying, okay, well, maybe there's just one of those groups that is hitting us in North Carolina. And the great news is that we see all of it. Maybe great, maybe not so great, a little bit of humor there, but all of this is hitting us in North Carolina. And some people might say, well, why? Why are we such a great target? And it's the exact same reason why that we all live here. It's a wonderful state to be in. We have tremendous amount of economic growth. We have our military installations. We have phenomenal universities. We have the Research Triangle Park, Piedmont Corridor. I mean, there's so much that we have here within this great state that other entities know about that and realize it, which is just making us a greater target. We've covered IC3 quite a bit, so I'm just gonna pass over that slide. And I wanted to jump into one of the main areas that we see within the FBI on the financially motivated categories. And these are the business email compromises, or if you hear about an email account takeover. This is instances where that your financial person that's responsible for wire transfers receives an email, generally speaking, and all of a sudden, there are going to be instructions in that email. And it may appear as if it's coming from an executive. It may actually be from your executive because there may be an intrusion into that email account. And so it will tell that person that handles wire transfers to go ahead and transfer out X amount of dollars to this account. Maybe their negotiations, maybe some type of business endeavor was successful, and go ahead and wire this money out. It is staggering to see the numbers in terms of just value that is wired out the door strictly by just an email. no phone calls for confirmation or anything like that. And I know for many companies, this is just the way that they handle business, is that emails come in, money goes out. And so that's fine if that's the business model. However, we have to get to a point of verifying our emails. And again, this might be just like, okay, well, no, this is an actual email in my company. So that must be my executive. And she or he might be telling them to go ahead and wire the money out. Again, there might be an intrusion into your network. So that could just be a cyber actor that's portraying your executive and asking for that money to go out the door. The loss values are staggering. Again, and this is not going away anytime soon. I can tell you that here within North Carolina, we probably receive 3 to 4 phone calls per week of business email compromises. So victims that are calling us to say, we just realized that we just wired out money to the wrong account. Here's the good news in all of this. If you contact the FBI within no more than 48 hours, we have a 76% rate of getting that money back. That's both if the money was transferred out domestically or overseas. There are things we can do on trying to get it back. However, we have to know quickly. So if all of a sudden, our cyber actors are good about trying to get you to wire money out on a Friday, maybe a Friday afternoon, and then you may not realize it until Monday morning. And so they already have a 48-hour jump on the investigators and trying to pull that money back. But if you fall prey to this, and again, this is not something to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did. They're very good at what they're doing. They're very good at trying to make it as legitimate as possible. If this happens, again, please contact us. My number is at the end. Or if you don't want to contact me specifically, if you go to the Internet Crime Complaint Center, again, ic3.gov, you can actually just put in a request or a complaint there, and they will get it over to us. They can actually initiate the recall on their side as well, working with other investigators at IC3 on trying to get that money back. So again, if anything like this happens, and this is both professionally, but also personally, we know there is a tremendous uptick even in real estate agents that are targeted for this, because as you can imagine, as you get close to closing, there's lots of emails that go back and forth with your real estate agent. Maybe your real estate agent's email account has been compromised and you receive a new wiring instructions to move your closing costs over to that new account. Again, and it seems legitimate because it may be coming from your real estate's email account, your real estate agent's email account. So again, even if it's personally, please contact us and we will work around the clock to try to get those funds back. Credential stuffing. This is something where it should come as no surprise that if you use the same username and password over and over again for any of the different accounts that you log into, there are threat actors that then can run automated large batch scripts on trying to utilize harvested usernames and passwords to try to get into other sites. So this is why that you'll hear different security researchers and firms telling you time and time again to have stronger passwords, use different passwords and usernames for all the different accounts that you're logging into, because we know that breaches occur. And so if all of a sudden, if somebody's able to gain access to one system and now they have your username, password, email account, and then they can just pivot and run all of those email accounts and passwords against everything, then like I said, that is obviously be problematic if the same username and password is used for your email account as it is for your savings account, your retirement account, things like that. So again, just be wary of those. Ransomware, obviously it's no surprise, you probably hear about it on a regular basis that ransomware is out, it's here to stay, it's not going away anytime soon. There are thousands of different variants of ransomware. There are ransomware services where that you can go to the dark web, and if you are not savvy enough to create your own ransomware, you can actually go out and say, hey, I'd like to purchase a ransomware variant that will do X, Y, Z. I want it to go to this Bitcoin account. Somebody will set it up for you. They will give it to you and then you can deploy it yourself. Like I said, it is not that difficult if you wanted to run ransomware, you could do it. Please don't do that. Please don't do that as an exercise and just hypothetical with all of it. But it is, like I said, it is unbelievable the amount of ransomware that's happening right now. Tom mentioned it before of having a plan and kind of preparing for this. One of the biggest things that we say are having backups, but backups that are not connected, as Tom mentioned, because the ransomware variants are looking for your backups. So they're trying to find your backups, then making it known that there's probably a better chance that you may pay the ransom if your backups are also encrypted. What I can say about this is that in the past 2 years or so, ransomware has evolved to now have extortion in it as well. So what we mean by this is that they are not going to only encrypt your entire network, they are going to take some of your information. So they will say, hey, Jessica, I've gone ahead, I've encrypted your entire network. I also have, X amount of data that I've also filled out. I'm going to give you a little sample of what that I was able to steal. So it's either you pay me or I will release all this out into the wild. And so that changes the dialogue a little bit more, and that's maybe changes how that you react to ransomware, because maybe you do have very good backups and you'll just say, okay, I'll be down for a day. I've been encrypted, but I have everything backed up and I can install it back on your network. Now with the extortion aspect of things, it changes things for sure. So just something to be cognizant of, as that, again, Tom mentioned, having that plan. What is that discussion? What will we do in this incident? Obviously, it might depend on what the cyber actors were able to take, but something that you should be planning for and having the discussion now versus in the heat of the moment when you are actually impacted by ransomware. This will go to kind of a bigger discussion on your crown jewels. So one of the big things that we always say to victims before and afterwards are, what's the most important thing on your network right now? And hopefully we can talk about that before a major cyber event, but what are the cyber actors after? And hopefully if it's something where that the most important thing within your network, you've been able to kind of cordon off from the rest of your network, maybe that ransomware variant wasn't able to get to it. And so then that way, if some exfil occurred, maybe it wasn't the most important thing on your network that you've been trying to secure. Again, just something to be considered about or considering when you're trying to prepare for what type of system that you have in terms of security. I think to really secure your systems, you have to take a step back and think of, but what are my crown jewels? What's the most important thing that I'm trying to secure when I'm setting up my infrastructure and security posture? This is a picture of Mr. Bogachev. Most people realize that the FBI has a top 10 most wanted. I think that many people don't realize that we have a cyber top 10 most wanted. When you take a look at Mr. Bogachev and you maybe now realizing that he is your neighbor, good news is that you'll be about $4.6 million richer if Mr. Bogachev is in fact your neighbor and you can turn him over to the FBI. So take a good look because there might be a big payday afterwards. I jokingly laugh about that. Mr. Bogachev has been around in the cyber world for over a decade. If you remember Game Over Zeus way back in the day, he definitely had his hands in that. He has been involved in numerous different malware families. He is believed to be over in Russia right now, which we don't have extradition out of Russia. But we're hoping at some point in time that we'll be able to get our hands on him. Please do not go board a flight to Moscow right now looking for the $4.6 million if you can find him. But again, just wanted to at least highlight that the FBI does take these cyber matters very seriously, and we have our own cyber top 10 most wanted. IoT, so Internet of Things. I am sure that everybody here has some type of IoT device in their home. There's probably a good chance you have an IoT device in your office or when you go back to your office, if you go back to your office. But this is one where these are some really neat, cool devices that are coming out. And you may think to yourself, well, how awesome is it that I have my sprinkler system and I have my baby camera and I have all these different elements that are all connected to my home wireless network. And so this is awesome that I can just do all of these different functionalities from my phone and running it while I'm at work. And I can do whatever I want to with these devices. Yes, however, we will put all of these different devices on our home network, probably without even, beating an eye, that it's just one of those that you're like, yep, this is an awesome new camera. I'm putting it on my network. I'm not going to think twice as to what the security is around these different devices. I'm not going to think at all about maybe if I put this device onto my network. Maybe it's going to compromise the network. Maybe there's vulnerabilities there where my network is no longer as secure as we thought it was. Obviously when we're putting on, laptops or desktop onto our home network, we're thinking about it a little bit more. We're making sure that antivirus is running, that there's a firewall set. Like there's steps that we take with those devices when we put them on our network. But these devices, we just very quickly will put them on our network. And what I can tell you is that cyber actors know that, and they are compromising these devices. There have been many times where a command and control device is actually running off of an IoT device in people's homes. We've had it before where that the FBI has had to show up to people's houses to ask for those slow cookers that you're running in your house because it was compromised and it was beaconing out a piece of malware. So we had to seize a slow cooker. This is where we are. I mean, like I said, I really hope we don't have to seize a refrigerator because I don't know how we're going to bring that back to our office. But this is where we are. I mean, we see ransomware on thermostats. So these devices that we just think are really neat and very accessible and kind of a great area of our lives, we just have to remember that there's vulnerabilities associated with them. And I'm not saying that all IoT is bad. I have IoT devices in my home. It's just being smart about how that we're plugging them in to that network. The insider threat, again, I just wanted to very quickly highlight this only because, again, this is happening and I do not want to create a set of paranoia. That is not the goal. And I want to just use an example that we had within the FBI to, again, just showcase this. This is not a time where I'm saying, hey, the FBI, we never have this problem for insider threats. So, but you guys need to prepare for it. If you all remember the case of Robert Hansen, he was a supervisor within the FBI who for over 17 years was taking the most sensitive data that we had within the FBI and turning it over to the Russians. He was arrested in 2001, and some people say that his arrest changed the FBI in 2001 more than 9/11 in terms of how we are posturing for an insider. And are we making sure that there is lockdowns, need to knows, even within our own organization? Is there an insider threat program? So that way we're making sure that if there are some nuances in somebody's life that we're making sure that that's being addressed. We obviously are a little bit more, we have to worry about this a little bit more just based upon the access and what that we do with our job. But, we have to take polygraph examinations. We have financial disclosures. We've had to really change the way that we look for it to make sure that we don't have another Robert Hansen within our organization. The picture's up on the screen. That is actually the footbridge where he would go over to and drop the information that he had stolen. Fortunately, while the USBs were around back then, he wasn't using them. So he would just be printing out all of the information. And you can actually see that is one of the packages that he brought over to his drop site. Once he would drop it under the bridge, he would go over to a mailbox. He would chalk the side of a mailbox to kind of indicate to his handler that his drop was just completed. And then, his handler would go take that information and get it over to Russia. He was arrested after making one of these drops, and he had done this for years. So there were countless drops in between then. And it is true that that he did say, "What took you so long?" When we finally were able to put our hands on him. So why does social engineering work? Bruce Schneier, who is a famous cryptologist, I think said it best, that the user is going to pick the dancing pigs over security every time. And it's true. So all of a sudden an email comes in and you say, hey, it's hilarious. Look at this dancing pig. And people, open that link, they open the attachment, and they're like, yep, that dancing pig is awesome. And so we are just one where that we will choose that. And this is the collective, all of us, over security all the time. And we just have to get past the point of looking for those dancing pigs. So as I try to wrap up and prepare for Maria to come over here, this is a famous quote that I think is very insightful. And I think it should hopefully kind of change the way that you all think about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is like chess. Every move has a counter, every decision a cost, and eventually you will lose a round. And I think that is very telling, and that's where we are, that at some point in time, we are going to prepare. At some point in time, we will not be successful. Somebody's going to get in. There's going to be A user that clicks on an email, email or a malicious attachment or malicious link, and they're going to get in. The biggest thing is, okay, I've prepared for this. How far does a cyber actor get? Am I able to make sure that I've got the right sensors in place to look for this type of activity? Because we can't stop everything. But what are we planning for today and identifying our crown jewels? What are we planning for today as to how that we respond to ransomware? How am I preparing for our backups? What's my incident response? Do I have the right team in place? That way, not so much a matter of if, but when this type of thing happen, then I'm in a good place to respond. This is my contact information, so please feel free to take that down. Like I said, hopefully we'll get to all the questions and answers. If there are certain questions or questions that I can't get to at the end, please feel free to contact me afterwards. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Ed.
Hey, thank you, Jessica. I appreciate it. Lots of insight there. That cyber top 10 thing was really interesting. And I don't think that's my neighbor, but I'm going to check. So thanks a bunch. Okay, so I'll get back to questions and answers in just a little bit. If you do have questions, please type them in. Questions for Tom, questions for Jessica, or questions for our next panelist. We've got Maria Thompson coming up. Let me introduce her to you as she gets shuffled into the seat there, the hot seat. Maria Thompson joined the North Carolina Department of Information Technology in January 2015. She's the state's first chief risk officer, reporting to the state's CIO. In her role, Maria is responsible for developing an integrated statewide framework to manage information risk, including operations, security, and data protection. She came to the North Carolina DIT with decades of IT security experience. She began her career with 20 years of service in the U.S. Marine Corps, which is awesome, and retired as the cybersecurity chief for the Marine Corps. Thank you for your service. Her previous roles include serving as the Iraq Theater of Operations Certification Authority. She also served as a senior security engineer, senior security architect, and a program manager for various cybersecurity firms. Ms. Thompson holds a Master's of Science in IT from the University of Maryland. So Maria, I'm so glad you're here. We look forward to hearing your insights. Thank you for joining us. Oh, I can't hear you. I think you're on mute. Are you on mute, perhaps? Want to try again? All right. The audio was working earlier. Okay, I guess they're going to try again. And I look forward to it. I hear voices.
There we go. Thanks.
How are we doing, Maria? Are you there?
Tom?
Might have gone over to Tom's.
Yeah.
Okay, why am I not?
I think they were all going to go from the same chair. They were just kind of shuffling in and out. So. Well, for the audience, this is a great time for you to enter in some questions that we can ask of our panelists coming up soon. There, I see you again.
Okay.
Yay! All
Yes,
right.
we had to shift.
You.
I apologize for that. Nothing like IT problems.
Ladies and gentlemen, Maria Thompson, yay!
Good morning, everyone. As I was saying earlier, that one of the great things about being the last presenter is that we generally have a short time to go through our slides. So I'll try to get us back on track and allow for more time for Q&A because I know that there's going to be a lot of good questions that are out there. One of the key things I'm sure you took away from the two presenters, Tom and Jessica, was the fact that we have a close partnership between the various elements that work to engage on cyber incidents within the state of North Carolina. This is something that has been a long time coming, and over time, we've continued to make this even more a closer relationship, more integrated for the betterment and the security of the states and citizens' data. So some of the quick things I'm going to cover is our security program at the state, because you've heard about the various ways in which the FBI and which the Fusion Center and Department of Public Safety, EM Cyber, how they integrate. So you'll see exactly where we stand. And a lot of folks are not familiar with what we do at the state level. And some of the security challenges we're dealing with, vendor risk management, how we manage that, because as you know, vendor risks, third-party risks are increasing. That's something that we need to pay attention to, because a lot of organizations do have their data outsourced in various SaaS platforms, in the cloud, so on and so forth. So how do we incorporate a program that prevents and protects the data that we have from any kind of risks? And then, of course, the whole of state approach to cyber, how we tie all of that together. And I know that Tom has covered some of those pieces, as well as Jessica, but I'll just briefly go over some of those parts that may not have been touched on. So the security program. My office sits within the Department of Information Technology, and it's called the Enterprise Security Risk Management Office, and that is a mouthful. One of these days, I'm going to rebrand that office because anyway, we'll go over with that. So my department is responsible for the establishment of statewide security policies and procedures. Of course, there's various authorities associated with that as to who can use those policies. It is for executive branch agencies, but the judicial branch, the legislative branch, and the school systems are allowed, or they can use the policies and incorporate them within their environment. But it's primarily for the executive branch agency side of the house. We have a very robust cyber awareness training program. We have forensics. We host the state's Security Operations Center that's available 24/7, 365, eyes on glass, to make sure that if there are anything anomalous that's occurring, anything that goes bump in the night, that we have a team of subject matter experts that are prepared to start doing the triage as necessary and incident response and forensics to get us in a better state. We have a very good group of vulnerability managers, practitioners, that we constantly are assessing the networks to make sure that their patches are being implemented as they should, that we are maintaining a steady state as far as security compliance. We have controls assessments that we do on a regular basis on not just the DIT, the organization, but executive branch agencies. Now, if you're not familiar with DIT, DIT is an organization that provides hosting services, IT services for state agencies and for academic institutions and for local governments. So we have 2 data centers, Eastern and Western Data Center, that's available for any government entity to host their systems and services. So we have to make sure that that environment maintains a good posture, because there's a lot of important systems, critical systems to the citizens that reside within those parameters. We have adopted, for those who are curious, we've adopted the NIST risk management framework, the NIST 853, Rev 4, soon to be Rev 5, in 2018. So we have leveraged the best of breed framework for how we address the security controls that we put in place. We have a continuous monitoring plan. I mentioned some of the scanning that we're doing on a regular basis, but every agency has to assess their environment at minimum annually to identify what those critical gaps are. And of course, when it comes to cyber awareness, we know that making sure that the end users that have access to the network, that they are our first line of defense. So we have a very robust training program in which we ensure that they are giving training, whether it's through our LMS system, or we're doing phishing exercises, which, by the way, we still do phishing exercises even during this pandemic that we're dealing with, because we know that that the bad guys are looking to take advantage of the end users, even in their remote lives, in their home lives that they're operating from. So we want to make sure that we keep cybersecurity on the forefront of their minds. So I borrowed, I won't say I stole, because we have an FBI agent in our midst here, but I borrowed this slide from a NASCIO report that was recently released. And if you're not familiar with NASCIO, it's the National Association of State CIOs. And every year they do a report on cybersecurity across all of the states. And this was a result of the survey that they recently did. And so they had all 50 states and one territory actually responded. So as you know, we are dealing with the pandemic situation right now, and a lot of the state entities are working remote. And this was a very challenging time for us initially. I think we're slowly getting into that steady state area, that sweet spot where we have identified where our gaps were. But initially, some of the crazy things that we had to deal with was, of course, understanding whether or not there was resiliency built into in the infrastructure, making sure that it could support all of the various external connections, remote connections back into the network. And this is something across all the states. We all had to deal with that. I think within North Carolina, we were in a better shape than some of our peer states. Fortunately for us, unfortunately for them, we didn't have to do much to shore up our infrastructure, but it was a definite concern because it was going to be tested during this time. For the security team, we had to make sure that we were looking at all the endpoints, that we had some level of visibility into the endpoints, because we know that now these endpoints are not connected physically to our state infrastructure anymore, and they're on their home networks. We have no control over the home network. So that was very concerning for us. And that's something that we took very important for us to try to figure out how could we get agents out, how could we make sure that not only that we had visibility on the endpoints, but we also were empowering the end users to take responsibility for their security in their environments. I mentioned before phishing. We had to continue with our phishing exercises because we know that we are constantly being phished and that the end users are being phished by the bad guys. So we wanted to make sure that they were prepared for that, and constantly giving updates as far as business continuity to make sure that our plans that we had in place, that they were being updated to reflect the new and the changing environment and the landscape that we currently have. But unfortunately, in addition to what we're dealing with the pandemic, we had to deal with ransomware. And so this slide just speaks to the attacks that were reported to us during 2019. As you can see, 2019 was when we truly started getting an understanding of how impactful that ransomware was to the state and local government. Within North Carolina, as you can see, 3 counties, a city, sheriff's office, 911 systems, which are first responders networks, state agency, and for those who are interested, 21 ABC board locations were impacted during 2019. And in that little capture, that area there on the slide where it speaks to the sector and the academic and the known ransomware, I put that there because that was provided by one of our vendor partners that operate in the cybersecurity world, CrowdStrike, as a matter of fact. And you can see through their analysis, the types of ransomware variants that were known to impact local government and municipalities. Now, if you take a look at the types on our slide, you'll see that there's almost a one-to-one match. So we were seeing exactly the same types of variants within North Carolina during 2019. Now, 2020 really started out with a bang. We were hoping that the numbers would go down. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is that it is increasing over time. And it was covered before, but truly it's because we're paying the ransom. They're finding that it is very marketable for them to be in the business of selling ransomware or pushing ransomware out to systems. 2020, as you can see, we have 3 counties today, 3 cities, and it says 4 K through 12s, but actually that number has increased by 1, sadly. Most recently, we were informed of another K through 12 school that was impacted by ransomware, and then 3 higher education organizations. And look at the type of variants that you see out there. Last year, we only had 3 major variants that we were dealing with. The numbers have increased exponentially. As you can see, it's continuing to grow. And it is very concerning because when we think that we have an understanding of one type of ransomware and how it's being pushed out and deployed and the impacts to the environment, it's a shifting thing. It's a shifting landscape. And so we rely heavily on our federal partners to help us to address and better understand the TTPs, the techniques and procedures used by these bad guys as they try to leverage these various ransom variants within our environment. And so the question is always to pay or not to pay. Now, from a state perspective, we recommend strongly that organizations do not pay. And on my next slide, I'll cover one of the reasons why I think it is important that we don't. Obviously, we don't want to continue this monetizing this situation where we're creating this vicious cycle. But this slide now was taken from one of our vendor partners' the Proofpoints 2020 State of Fish Report. And as you can see, there's no guarantee that if you pay the ransom that you will actually get your data back. And if you do get your data back, there's no guarantee that your data is not still being sold on the dark web. And so, when we have organizations that pay the ransom because of operational demands, because they want to get back up and operational, the risk is still there. Your data has still been compromised. No matter what you do, your data has been compromised. And that is a reality that has to set in. And we really recommend and strongly encourage folks to take that approach to not pay the ransom. Vendor risk management. I spoke about how third-party vendors that we do business with, that they are being hit heavy and hard. In last year within Texas, there was one particular vendor that was hit that impacted, I think it was over 17 various counties within Texas. We've had something similar, when the bad guys know that the big game hunters, that they can hit certain elements that will impact multiple organizations. And then there's more of an impetus to pay the ransom. So within the state of North Carolina, we've developed this vendor risk management, and it's a maturing process. But we want to make sure that those vendors that we do business with understand the severity of the information that they are holding for the state and that they are following best practices. Yes, it's possible that even after all of the steps that we take, that an entity could still get hit by a ransom, but we still want to make sure that those folks have the right security posture in place before we give them the state data. So we have various reports and assessment that we do with our vendor partners. We don't just go into a contract with them. We also leverage third-party assessments that have already been done, such as FedRAMP, if you're familiar with the Federal Risk Assessment Management Program, I believe that's what it's called. The SOC 2 Type 2, HITRUST, those types of certifications that ensure that there's a rigor applied to the security programs that these organizations have. And also, we require all of our vendors within our contracts to report confirmed cyber incidents within 24 hours. And this is the same requirement that we have for state and local entities. And that ties back into the whole of state approach. Just going back a few years, we realized that from a state perspective, we did not have a cohesive plan if something significant, if there was a significant cyber incident that impacted the state. And that's really what was the catalyst to establishing a whole of state approach to cybersecurity, because we had to look across. We understand that we're all under-resourced. So we had to look and see where all the resources were within the state so that we could pool our resources together and bring that as a package, if you will, to bear. So some of the things that we've done in the state, and I know Tom touched on it, we have a solution called BitSight that's currently monitoring local county infrastructure, also our LEAs and our community colleges. We also have the program for the iSensors, and we hope to continue building that out. That will give not only the local government another tool, another layer of defense and depth in their environment, but also give us another visibility into the infrastructure to assist them when needed. So we can start taking, getting that data and making use of it and seeing how we can do some predictive analysis on potentially where the next cyber attack could be occurring. We've established a significant incident plan, which is what I talked about before, the disruption plan that speaks to if something happens, who's the first element to be contacted, what is the roles and responsibilities for all of the entities that are part of the cyber response force. And then within our laws, we've also implemented laws, statutes that speak to the requirement for information sharing. The only way that we can get better is pooling our resources, doing things as a team, sharing the information. When something happens, when you have a cyber incident, report those. We don't care specifically about whether or not your IP ranges, your network, so on and so forth. We want to know what are those indicators of compromises that you have seen in your environment that could potentially impact another entity within the state. So we really recommend, highly recommend, that you share your data with the state of North Carolina so that we can aggregate that information and push it out as widely as possible so we can all be protected. And this is for private sector companies as well. So the law under House Bill 217 does highly encourage that private sector companies do participate in this information sharing process. And most recently, we have established in partnership with 211 and the Cybercrime Network, we've established a cybercrime hotline that now citizens can call any day, anytime, if they have a cybercrime, if they're a victim of cybercrime. And those folks would help them, will help them, and follow up afterwards on any, on their situation. Will help them if they need to go contact the FBI and they're not sure how to. The cybercrime hotline folks specialists will help them, direct them to the right site, will help them fill out the form if needed. So again, we're building on this. We have things we're doing within the local government, within the state, and now we have something that's out there to help the citizens of North Carolina. Again, whole of state approach to cybersecurity. And again, and there it is. So hopefully I left some time for us to answer questions as needed.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. That was awesome. Really appreciate it, Maria. The 211 initiative is very forward looking, very cool. I'm sure you're going to get some really good reporting out of that and a better understanding. Can you hear me? Is that okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You're looking at the camera like maybe you couldn't. So I have a series of questions here from the audience, plus some questions that just came to my own head. And I'll address maybe the first couple to specific, folks, Tom, Jessica, and then Maria. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right, sounds good. So I have a question. I want to get really practical here. So a question for Tom. When and how does a company or local citizen decide to reach out to law enforcement? I mean, we've got some great minds here. You three are incredible. But how do I know myself or for my company when I should reach out to law enforcement, and what do I do? What steps do I do? Do I call 211 or please advise?
I'll at least start.
Okay.
From my perspective of when do we engage law enforcement? So I would hope that we wouldn't necessarily be your first call. However, I don't want to be the last phone call. So, and what I say by that is that we want to get to the point where that when you're creating your response plan, we have it so that law enforcement is maybe towards like the top third. So you've called your executives, you called your general counsel, you informed them of kind of what's going on, who are my stakeholders. Okay, now bring in law enforcement because as we've already highlighted, depending on whether you're, state, local government, there's a lot of resources just outside of the FBI or state law enforcement that can assist. But there's lots of other resources that we can bring to the table. Like I said, for private companies, I mean, there's lots that we can do on trying to assist with incident response, on best practices, on tools that you can assist on trying to get your networks back up and running. So we like to be like sooner than later. However, we completely understand and we wouldn't expect to be the first phone call. A lot of times people also ask like, well, what is that threshold? We like to get to the point where that we have a relationship with you beforehand. So that way we can talk to kind of establish that of, listen, you know what noise is? So don't call us every time you have just some spam that hits your network. You know what your network is. So you know this is different. This is something that we're like, there's acting not like compared to our normal spam filters. There's something where that there's a piece of malware that gives us concern. Call us. And when you call us, it doesn't mean that now, you have agreed to go testify in trial or anything like that. You can call us and let's just have that discussion where we can say, you know what, we haven't seen that before. Let's dig into it a little bit more on our side. Or yes, this is a problem. So if you have this malware, this also means 1, 2, 3. Be prepared. This malware is the precursor to ransomware. So you need to establish, your settings so that way you realize that ransomware may be dropped next. Right. And Tom, I don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah, just to add to that, when you are when you are reporting, you're working with law enforcement, and then your CIO, your PIO, public information officer, wants to report out, they can say, hey, we're currently working with law enforcement, and this is, so we're not going to say much more. So that's a benefit. Having the evidentiary value of information that's gathered up front. You don't want your sysadmins doing a lot of work and recovery before the FBI is able to get an image, or our team's able to get an image and provide to the FBI, so that that evidence isn't corrupted. So should it ever end in court, it is cleaned up. There's very, very clear who had the evidence, where did it come from, why is it good?
Sure.
And lastly, I just want to say, when you deal with us or you deal with the FBI, that the information you give us is not going to show up in the media. One of the things sometimes you'll see, this was reported by law enforcement. What that is things out of affidavits for warrants. But the FBI is not going to, when you have that conversation with the squad, they're not going to be sending that to anybody else, so you can feel confident dealing with it.
That's great. That's great. So I have a follow-up question, maybe specifically for Maria. It's about getting involved in cybersecurity, maybe wanting to embark on a career in this space from a cyber defense perspective, right? I mean, there's a bunch of hacker conferences and stuff like that, but if somebody's really inspired and motivated, they want to do the kind of work you've done for so many different organizations and the military, how can they dip their toe in the water? How can they get started? I imagine there's a lot of different ways in. What do you recommend?
So I think from an education perspective, we have, I believe it's 12, we're up to 12 NSA DHS CAEs within the state of North Carolina. I am so pleased to see that. I was actually counting them out the other day, because when I joined the state almost 6 years ago, I think we were at 7. Yeah. So the fact that we're increasing over time is awesome. And these are schools within North Carolina that have, and Montreat is actually one of those schools that have a vetted security program that will give you the solid foundation on, and a footprint into cybersecurity. The next thing that I would say is to look for those intern and apprenticeship opportunities that are out there. There are a lot of, and especially if you're a veteran, there's programs out there for veterans that, such as the Cisco veteran cyber program. The state has one as well. And there's, if you look at most of the large IT companies, go to their websites, you will see that they have internship programs, the IBM, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. You just have to really dig down and figure out what area that you'd like, that's interesting to you, that you'd like to pursue. And then obviously call me, reach out to me, because I can help you, I can be a mentor as needed, and I can also help to direct you in certain programs that may be up and coming, because things are changing all the time. And so, I may not have the most recent information today, but tomorrow there may be 5 programs, because a lot of organizations out there are really trying to figure out how can we get, to crack the nut on the cyber workforce and the deficiencies that we're dealing right now from a resource perspective.
That's really great practical advice. And there are so many different resources available, unlike there were even 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really good. We had a question that just came in. I'm looking at the DoD scholarship. Where do I apply at? I think these Centers for Academic Excellence that you talked about, CAE, are possibilities. You got to check to make sure that they map in. Any other thoughts regarding that from anybody?
So that's generally where I've seen, and I believe you said the NSF scholarships, correct?
It didn't say, it just said DoD scholarship. So that would imply not NSF.
Yeah, the one that I'm more familiar with is the Scholarship for Hire, yeah, which generally would be through an NSA CAE school. I do know that some of the community colleges that we have partnerships with the 4-year colleges. And so it's possible that you can start your program with a Forsyth or, a Wake Tech, and then transfer your last 2 years into a 4-year college, A&T, NC State, so on and so forth. So I would say reach out to the NSA CAEs and find out when they're offering those programs. We have tried to work with them in the past to find locations for those students to come in and do their time at the state as well, because I know some people want to stay at the state and not necessarily do their payback time with a federal agency. But, you know, it takes a little bit of a wrangling to get with the state. So again, work in progress, but generally reach out to the NSACAEs and they will provide better guidance on that.
Awesome advice. Hey, I'd like to thank our panelists. Our time is coming to a close, but Tom, Jessica, Maria, you were fantastic. You shared such great insight. So we have a couple of afternoon sessions for you that you really want to check out. I love this retreat conference. I've been to every single one of them. Here we are going virtual, and the talks and information sharing is still fantastic. So this afternoon at 3 p.m., we're going to have a leadership and team alignment workshop by Colonel George Eustra. It's not specific to cybersecurity, Colonel Eustra's background, but he's got 30 years of teaching, mentoring, and experience within Special Operations Command. So we can learn about how to apply his great knowledge into the cybersecurity field. So bring your team and then bring them together for a really wonderful time with Colonel Eustra coming up 3 p.m. Eastern time today. And then we're going to close today with a different yet insightful message from Charles Denler. Charles is a winner of 3 Emmys, 4 Global Music Awards, and a whole bunch of other awards. Charles has written music for Disney, NBC, Oprah, many others, and he's created some of the most beautiful music of our time. And as National Geographic wrote about him, they said he's a genius. So you really should come and hear how he stays curious, how he helps to embody the various items of character we talked about throughout these sessions. You really should come. That'll be this afternoon. Really looking forward to it. And I guess to close out, I'll turn it over to Adam. Adam, you wanna finish up this morning session? Oh, I think you're on mute. They always get you that
Ed,
way.
thanks for the great facilitation. Tom, Maria, Jessica, thank you so much for your leadership, your insights. We had a lot of these questions come up. You guys just nailed them as you were going through the presentations. One last thing I'll leave you with is that we also have a special giveaway for the 3 o'clock sessions. Those who attend that session, there's a cyber escape room. So it's about building teamwork and collaboration in cybersecurity and becoming more aware. It's not to develop cybersecurity skills, but more awareness. It's a great social engineering attack. It's a great virtual cyber escape room. Those who attend can schedule it later with their teams. That in part was funded by the state of North Carolina. So we're thankful to the Department of Information Technology for funding a lot of this conference and funding a lot of the things that we're able to do for the state. Everybody have an awesome day, and hopefully we'll see you at 3 o'clock. Cheers.